Terrorism knows no religion, no color, no gender, and no age. The terrorists will stop at nothing in creating a pool of human victims. How can we justify the escalation from a peaceful time to the murdering of innocent victims within our society? Has life as we know it been reduced to an easy kill? Since the summer of 1966, our homegrown terror has increased in its frequency and its deadliness. It began July 14, 1966, when Richard Speck committed one of the most notorious mass murders when he killed 8 student nurses in a Chicago townhouse. Charles Joseph Whitman killed 15 and wounded 30 university students and others of the University of Texas Austin campus. Whitman, age 25, a former U.S. Marine, began his trail of carnage when he went to his mother's house, where he strangled her with a rubber hose and then stabbed her 3 times in the heart, killing her. From there, Whitman went to his home and killed his wife by stabbing her 5 times, killing her as she slept. It was from within the Austin, Texas University Historic Clock Tower that Charles Whitman, with combat precision, fired methodically upon the unsuspected victims on the grounds below. In preparation for his killing spree, Whitman packed his Marine Corps footlocker with 7 firearms, which consisted of 3 rifles, 1 shotgun, 3 pistols, and over 700 rounds of ammunition. The footlocker also contained a radio, a container of gasoline, 3 gallons of water, a compass, a hammer, a hatchet, canned meats, 2 knives, a flashlight with batteries, food supplies, and personal items. Once Whitman arrived on the 28th floor of the observation deck of the main building of the University of Texas campus, he coldly struck his first campus victim, 51-year-old Edna E. Townsley, in the back of the head with the butt of one of the rifles, killing her. Why? Her only crime was being the receptionist who was on duty when Whitman arrived in the tower. Whitman's next victims were the Gabor and Lamport family. They were unaware of what was about to happen as they attempted to enter the observation deck. M.J. Gabor, his wife Mary, their 2 sons, Mark and Mike, Mary's sister, Marguerite Laporte, and her husband, William, were about to enter the deck when Whitman opened fire with a short-barrel shotgun, killing Mark and his aunt, Marguerite, and seriously wounding Mary and her son, Mike. William Laporte and M.J. Gabor fled the building seeking help. For the next 96 minutes, from the tower of the 28th floor, Whitman set his sights on students and others. From his vantage point, he was able to move about the tower, firing a barrage of shots at multiple victims. His first shot toward the grounds area was into 18-year-old Clara Wilson, who was 8 months pregnant and walking across the campus grounds with her 18-year-old fiancé, Thomas F. Ekman. While using a high-powered sniper rifle, Whitman's bullet entered Wilson's left hip and shattered the skull of her unborn child, killing the infant instantly. Whitman then fired a shot into Ekman, hitting him in the upper left torso. Ekman died from his injury, but Wilson survived. Because Whitman had meticulously placed the weapons about the tower, he was able to fire them at random, making it appear that there were several shooters in the tower. When it appeared that the nightmare would never end, 3 Austin police officers, along with a Texas Department safety officer, worked their way up to the tower observation deck, and upon confronting Whitman, shot and killed him. Although Whitman died that day, he left a lot of unanswered questions. He also left the survivors wondering, how and why was I spared? One of the survivors asking why is Dr. Roland Cap Elke.
Thank you, Dr. Elke, for sitting down and talking with us today to discuss a tragic event in our American history that occurred over 50 years ago. The shooting at the University of Texas, Austin, tower shootings that resulted in the death of 16 individuals and 31 injured. You were blessed to be one of the survivors, and we're here today to talk to you about being a survivor and the incident. So thank you, number one, for allowing us to interview you. Okay. Why don't we start with telling me something about yourself now?
Well, thank you, Dr. Wells Leonard, as I know you and have known you for a number of years. Thanks for inviting me to do this. A little bit about myself. It does seem like not 50 years ago, it seems more like yesterday, because I remember those events so very clearly. Right now I am a teacher, a full professor at Concordia University, Wisconsin. We're actually being filmed in the library here at Concordia. And I've been here 16 years full time. Right now I am a member of the philosophy department. My doctorate was in English literature, and I have 4 masters as well, 2 in theology from Wisconsin Lutheran Seminary, 1 in history and 1 in English, as well as the doctorate. Those are from the University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee. In addition, I spent a year of study at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. And so I've really enjoyed the world of academia, as have you, following your career in law enforcement. I have children, grown children. My youngest is college age. I have grandchildren, and unlike you, no great-grandchildren yet. But yeah, thinking back to 50 years ago, it was 50 years ago last month, August 1st, 1966, so the 50th anniversary. And I believe God has a plan. As a matter of fact, the Bible says in Psalm 31, "My times are in your hands, O Lord." And God wanted me around for some more time here, and if it hadn't been for that, I wouldn't have the wonderful experiences I've had, the children, grandchildren, and have been blessed in being able to work at a great school like this and being able to help educate and bring others along the way.
Cap, you don't have to call you Cap, right? Describe the fateful day. What were you doing? What was it like on the campus that day?
Well, I had been enrolled in the TEFL program, T-E-F-L, Teaching English as a Foreign Language program at the University of Texas in Austin. And we were in the training there. I was with a number of other people from all over the country, so I made some very nice friends there. And we were at the time on lunch break. It was about noon, and I was walking with 2 other friends at the time, and we were going down Guadalupe Avenue, right around the Student Union, where they had the student store with T-shirts and I think books too, as I recall, and whatever else. It was a very busy street. Just across the street from the Greens, and in that area the Texas Tower stood. I'd been up the tower once or twice before that.
It's a historical, like a monument.
It was a monument, and had been up there on the observation deck. You could look out over the deck and see the lands all around the university. So it was a beautiful view from up there. Well, anyway, we were on our lunch break and walking down Guadalupe Avenue there. We heard some cracks, some pops. I never thought anything of it. I thought maybe there was some construction going on. And then all at once, the friend next to me let out a kind of a yelp. And I looked at him, and he was holding his hand. There was a gash going through his wrist, and his hand had almost fallen off. And I saw in my left arm all kinds of spatter marks of blood. I didn't feel anything. It was just a slight sting. It was the shrapnel from the bullet that had broken up through him.
So you was initially hit with the shrapnel?
Shrapnel, yes.
Okay.
He was in the middle. He had his watch on this hand. I was on his right. And that's why he was looking at his watch, and the bullet hit it and then went through his wrist and hit me in the arm. Then I felt a jolt in my other arm, and that was a direct hit, and there was a big gash in my right arm. It hadn't broken the bone, but it was bleeding profusely, and I saw this big gash, and we realized, the three of us, we had to take cover. I took cover, or went inside not into the door, but there was a little enclave in front of the student union area. And my friend sat down on the sidewalk. He was kind of stunned. And the other friend took cover in the building next to us. We were, everybody was kind of in a shock. I looked back and I thought, well, he shouldn't be sitting there, so I went back to get him. And we got into the building next to us, which happened to be a jewelry store. Well, in coming back, I got hit again, this time not from behind, but in the front, where it was again shrapnel. All kinds of spots went through my, I had tan jeans on at the time, Levi's, and there were all these spots from the shrapnel and blood coming out of the front of my leg there. We went into this store that was next to us, which, like I said, was a jewelry store. And others had gone in there too, because now people realized something was going on and were getting into the buildings off of the sidewalk. I saw somebody across the street who was lying down there, apparently hit. But again, we still really didn't grasp what was happening. Was there some kind of problem with the construction site, or they were using maybe explosives?
So no one was thinking sniper?
No, I wasn't thinking sniper at all. It was interesting, though, that about a month or so before that, there had been in the news a mass killing of 8 nurses up in Chicago. But nobody was thinking along this kind of thing. And then there was a bullet that came through the window of the store. As a matter of fact, I'm not sure of it, but there was on the front cover of both Time magazine and Life magazine a picture of a store window looking up at the tower with a bullet hole through the front of it. And it might have been the store that we were in. I'm not certain of that. But another bullet did come through the window of the store. It hit the store manager, and he was wounded too. So now we did realize that this was shooting going on. But we still weren't sure what it was, because we also heard shots from behind. And it turned out that people had gotten into the alley back there behind the stores and were beginning to fire back at the tower. Well, we weren't aware of any of this. And somebody, I remember somebody still said, well, maybe it's somebody coming here for the jewelry store. Maybe they're coming in here with guns. Well, we had no idea what was going on. Most of the people went into a back room in the store because we realized there was something going on out in the front. And again, we heard shots from the back, so we didn't know.
Who were the people from the back? Who were they?
The ones who were firing back
Yes.
from the alley?
Mhm.
They were local sharpshooters, people with their rifles. And I'll tell you in a minute, we did end up back there. And so we did see some of the people with guns back there.
Okay.
There was a knocking at the back door. We weren't sure, should we open it or not? Because somebody said, well, wait a minute, who is it? Is it somebody coming in here with guns or whatever? But we felt, after being reassured that this was safe, we opened the door and they said, you're going to have to go out the back. As a matter of fact, there was an ambulance in the back in the alley. The ambulance driver and an aide had tried to come around the front, and the ambulance driver, from what I understood, had been shot in the process. So if we were going to get to the ambulance, it had to be out the back. Well, a number of us went out the back, and there was a fence in the back. We had to climb over the fence. We were bleeding and not knowing what's going on. We climbed over the fence. And then we saw all kinds of people back in the alley where they felt fairly secure because there were buildings and fences and barricades. But the ambulance was back there. That's when I saw these people with rifles taking shots up, and it was toward the tower.
Now, they were civilians.
These were civilians, right. So we got in the ambulance, and they were taking people to 2 different hospitals. And I was taken to the one, and when we got there, we started to learn more about what was going on with the sniper shooting from the tower.
So some of the reports indicate that the people that you referred to in the alley came because this had lasted for such a long period of time, and that the police were not able to reach the tower because they were not equipped with the appropriate weapons to get there, and that these was civilians who had similar type weapons that would be able to reach the target.
Right. We learned when we got to the hospital, because people there told us what had happened. And one of the fellows who had been involved in the Peace Corps training program as kind of an aide was there. And he talked to me and told me some of what had been transpiring. From what I've heard, most of the damage that Charles Whitman did was in the first minutes, 15 or 20 minutes. And then after that, because of people firing back at him, he was sort of pinned down, wasn't able to do much. But he had been going around the 4 sides of the tower. There was a wall, stone wall, about waist high. And I believe it was on the 28th floor.
Yes, it was.
It was a little bit scary, if you went up there, because you're way up there, and there was no other fencing or any plastic partition, but you were just up there with this little wall and looking down all the way. So he had been going around the 4 sides, and as it turns out, 2 policemen, one off duty, went up the tower. When you got up to, it was the floor before, these are the 26th or 27th, the elevator stopped, and then there was a walkway to go up the rest of the way to the 28th floor. And they went up there, prepared to shoot him because they weren't going to get in a gunfight up there with him.
Right.
And one was going to go one way, one the other way. And the first, as soon as they saw him, from what I've heard, they did shoot him. Now, I have not read as extensively as others, even though I was personally involved, about this. I was involved in it, and I was a part of it, but did not feel a compulsion over the years to become an expert in everything that happened. I read some things like the Time article, the Life article, local papers, a couple of them, called me from Milwaukee when they found out I was involved, and I was in the hospital, and questioned me. And they also called my parents who lived in Milwaukee. And my parents did get a hold of me, and actually this friend from the university called them from the hospital room. And my dad was a pastor, a Lutheran pastor, and he said, "Don't worry, Pastor Elke, your son is alive," or something like that, or wasn't fatally shot. And my father was shocked. He didn't even know I'd been shot. And here I was sitting in a hospital room. So I did talk to them, and everybody was assured that we were fine too. But one of the people from our Peace Corps training program, the Iran TEFL program, had been fatally shot. He was on the rooftop of one of the buildings there at the university. He was not with the three of us. The students were all over the campus because, again, it was the lunchtime.
All of us being in administrative functions at universities, now we have all the protocols and strategies of how we're going to address these when they occur. How do you see us responding to it now?
Well, over the years, occasionally people would be asking me about the experience, maybe on an anniversary of the shooting.
Like what I'm doing now?
Like you're doing now. And after the Virginia Tech shooting several years ago, I was interviewed on all of the TV stations in Milwaukee. So for whatever protocols have been made, whatever advances have been made, this kind of thing still could and did happen. I am not nearly the expert in police procedures and so on as you and Corrine are, for that matter. And I think things are much more watched today on campuses. Sometimes I wonder where it says, for example, on our campus, this is a gun-free zone.
Right.
Well, someone who has a gun and wants to do harm to others, in my mind, isn't going to think, oh, it's a gun-free zone, I better not go in there with my gun. He's going to think, oh, it's a gun-free zone, nobody's going to be there to stop me. That's how I look at some of that. But I think a lot has been done, and yet, as we've seen just in other areas with the shooting in San Bernardino, it's not just college campuses by any means.
Right.
That was a Christmas party or a holiday party. And people are always going to be able to find access to some area, and it doesn't even have to be with a gun. Look at in Nice, France, the truck driver. It seems, though, getting back to Texas Tower, August 1st, 1966, that did seem, from what I know, to mark an upsurge in this kind of thing. I know there were terrible murders. I did read a little bit about it, going way back in the history of America and other countries too, for that matter. And yes, we have it happen in America, but it does happen in other parts of the world too, and sometimes even in bigger numbers from what I've read. I would like to think more, I know more has been done.
Right.
And I think a lot of measures have been taken for safety.
Mm-hmm.
And I really applaud our law enforcement forces throughout the country for that and for the expertise that people in the work have. I think that's really a great thing.
I know one of the officers that was involved, in fact, the one that is the literature indicate shot Whitman,
Mhm.
is Officer Martinez.
Martinez, yes.
Right. And one of the things that he said he did was that when he was getting ready to go up the tower, he had to pass by individuals who was injured, but knew he could not stop if he had to go up into that tower. So he suffered from some guilt, you know. But now that is the practice in law enforcement. You're actually taught that you can save more lives by getting the sniper or the shooter than it is
Yes.
to stop and help the other individuals. And it plays a lot into some of the survival guilt that law enforcement officers experience when they have to pass by someone who is injured, because we're taught to be first responders to the injured and ones who are in danger, and the suspect will normally treat it as last resort, take care of that. That is changing. Another thing that
In what way is it changing?
it is changing now that you go past the
Oh,
person
yes,
who's injured
yes.
and go and take
Yeah.
out the target.
Yeah.
Take out the target. The other thing that is showing from some of the research on this is that we have a mental health issue. That there's a lot of individuals that are engaging in these type of individuals, engaging in this type of activity that has mental health issues that we don't really know how to address it, or we haven't addressed it. And it puts burdens on administrators at schools as to how do you address it. So if I ask you, how do you address it? Here's Whitman, who is supposed to have told one of his professors that he was going to engage in these violent acts. How are we taught to respond to that now?
Yes, I heard that, or I had read that he had talked to his counselor
Right.
and said that. And you often hear after the fact that the person who has been told this, in confidence in many cases, I believe,
Right.
will say, I don't, or I didn't think they meant it seriously. Some of these people have even, this is a different case, but put things on Facebook
Yes.
about what they're going to do, and people don't take it seriously. Now I think there is more taking it seriously. I'd like to think that, because when someone says something like that, it is not ever to be taken just lightly and blown off. People shouldn't even joke about that kind of thing.
That's correct. Now, we know that you're a pastor, and pastors, counselors, and some professionals, professions just normally hear people take people confessions, counsel them in confidence. In a school setting, a school counselor who hears something like this, we should be, in my opinion, we should be better prepared on how to deal with that for them as well, giving them avenues of how to respond that protects the ethics of their profession.
I agree with that. I'm not personally engaged in counseling. I did years ago. I was a pastor of a church. But for a long time now, I've been in other areas of work, being an editor for a number of years, about 15 years, and now teaching for 16, where I really don't do that. If in teaching my courses, I counsel, it's basically about how to get your grade up or something like that. So I've had people share some things, but never anything like that of a threatening nature, no.
You know, I'm one of those who believe.
I shouldn't say never. Years ago, I'd been given a call to go visit somebody in a trailer court who was threatening to harm herself. But that was a different case than what you're talking about.
Another thing that is significant in the literature regarding these mass shooting events are heroes. Heroes. And I know you don't want to hear this, but you know you're a hero. You went back to help bring your friend out of harm's way. And heroes are very modest. But there's another component to being the hero that I'm finding out from doing this research that goes beyond being a hero. I looked at the shootings in one of the Carolinas where the people were shot inside of the church. And to a person, they said they forgive the person who did that. San Bernardino, we forgive the person who did that. The schools, we forgive the person who did that. Oklahoma City bombing, we forgive the person who did that. Some who didn't even want McVeigh to get the death penalty. You know, and it's not a death penalty conversation. Where is this all connected to spirituality or just human beings, or just even the most tragic times, even as a hero, you forgive?
Well, before talking about that, just talking about the matter of guilt, I can see where that would happen when you're talking about police going past people and so on. But they should realize, of course, they're doing the best thing.
Okay.
And isn't it, just as an aside, kind of a military tactic going way back that you always go toward the sound of where the shooting is or the noise of the battle? And so I think they're doing their duty. As far as feeling guilty of whether I should have done more or not, I haven't thought much about that. I have plenty to feel guilty of in my life. Every day I fall short of what I should be. So, and as far as being a hero, I don't think of that either. I just think I try to do what I can every day to help others. And sometimes there are consequences, sometimes not. Not necessarily involved in physical mishaps like this. But I believe we ask forgiveness every day, and we also every day try, with God's help, to do what we can to help others and leave things in God's hands. And in that respect, I've been very blessed, in spite of my failings, to have been able to help people in many different ways.
Dr. Elke, Cap, I want to thank you sincerely for allowing us from the University of Memphis to interview you at one of my previous employers' locations, Concordia University, Wisconsin. And it has always been a pleasure to work with you. All right. Thank you so much.
Dr. Wells, Leonard, it's been a privilege to be with you again. And I must say, I really enjoyed it when you were over at the South Side Center there in our chats. Back in the office area, and a lot of humor there, and taking out our frustrations, not on each other, but just expressing them.
Yes.
So it's been a pleasure to get together again. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.